The topic of today's video, by popular request, is motivation. How to get motivated, how to stay motivated. What is it that you need to do to get leverage on yourself? Now, the first thing I want to point out with regards to this topic is it matters what you're trying to get motivated to do. Are you trying to get motivated to do something positive or negative? Are you trying to get motivated to do something that is very boring and mundane and easy to execute in terms of simple, but just difficult to force yourself to do, as in maybe it's painful or maybe it's no fun? Or is it something that actually requires creativity and unique input? There is a difference. For something that's very routine or mundane or just by the book to do, oftentimes you can use extrinsic motivation to get leverage on yourself. In those sorts of circumstances, oftentimes you can do something like get a friend to hold a certain amount of your money, and if you don't do it, not give the money back, or pay him a fine if he checks up on you and you didn't do said action, those sorts of things. Or you can get it through doing extrinsic rewards. If I do this, I will reward myself with that. And so that works really well with those sorts of tasks, because the thing with those tasks is it's just a matter of either you do it or you don't do it. It's not a matter of how you do it. And so the point I want to make to you is that to a certain extent, you could say that extrinsically, by imposing punishments, imposing rewards on yourself, imposing incentives, you can get yourself to pretty good at most things. You can get yourself to a pretty good level. But if you want to get to true greatness, you need to find something deeper than that. You need to find something intrinsic. You need to find a real reason, a real drive inside yourself, a real cause, a real purpose to what you're doing. Because without that, you're not going to have that same level of spark where you're going to think about it or work on it when you don't have to, or above and beyond. It's not going to be forefront of your minds. I think Tyler would call this reticular activation, right? Basically, the things that are most important to you, you focus on. So regardless of whether you're extrinsically motivated, if there's something like some sort of cash prize or some sort of other reward or compensation attached to it, that's enough to make you work during the times when you're actually overtly there and overtly focused, but it's not enough to keep it forefront of your mind, keep it on top of what you're doing the rest of the time. And that's important for true excellence, true mastery, true greatness, right? True greatness, true mastery doesn't come from a few hours on the weekend or a little spurt of effort here or there. It comes from being truly dedicated and focused all the time, to the point that every little thing you see, you're relating to your field, or you're finding a way to come up with creative ways to improve. So that's what we're really talking about when we talk about true excellence, true dedication, and to become a master of something. I'll give you an example from my own life. My dad was possibly the best dad you could possibly have, in my opinion. But his techniques only went so far. Basically, what he would do is anything that I showed some sort of interest in getting good at, he would come up with a program for me and make me get good at it, against my will oftentimes. So, for example, I decided at about age 10 I wanted to be a professional soccer player. So he actually came up with a program for me designed to, he basically got a bunch of soccer tapes, figured out the best little bits and pieces for training from all of them, put them together, compiled them, and he gave me a routine that I had to do for an hour a day. Every day. He'd send me out in the backyard with a ball, and I wasn't allowed to come back in for an hour. So I could sit around and chode outside, or I could actually do work. But the point was that time was dedicated regardless of whether I made it productive or not. So I may as well make it productive. And so I was forced to do it. And so during that time, during that 1 hour, I would work really hard. I would go through the steps, and that was enough. That was enough to make me better than just about anyone I was playing against, because they were just going to practice, going and having fun, and then I was actually training an hour a day outside of it. So of course I stood out. Of course I would be better than most of the people I was playing against, even though I wasn't as naturally good of an athlete as many of them. So that was enough to get me to a highly competent level. It was enough to get me to a point where I played on the state Olympic development team. I went to college. I was able to play in college. I was able to play a couple summers semi-pro. So I definitely wouldn't say that I was a failure at soccer by any means. I was fairly successful at it, but I never became great at soccer. I never became like the people that you see on TV making, $200,000 a week playing soccer. And the reason for that, twofold. Number one, probably, quite frankly, I'm not that big, I'm not that fast, I'm not the most athletic person in the world. So that probably held me back to a certain extent. However, possibly an even bigger thing, because speed and physicality aside, I can't do the things with the ball those people can do either. Probably the biggest thing was those people were really playing for the love of the game, were really extending themselves, pushing themselves, and doing it because it's all they had. It's an interesting phenomenon too. If you look at the people that are most successful in sports, there are a few that will come from the upper classes. There are a few that will come from rich backgrounds. But a vast majority of the people who excel athletically actually come from very poor backgrounds, where they don't necessarily have even great nutrition, they don't have access even to the best coaches. But the thing is, that game or that sport is all they have. If you look at basketball, look at boxing, look at soccer outside of the United States, around the world, most of the people that excel actually come from a lower echelon of society socioeconomically, and that's because they don't have any other options. If it's someone grows up and they have a choice of being a doctor, a lawyer, or an athlete, of course their parents are going to push them to be a doctor or a lawyer. Of course they have that thing to fall back on, so they're not going to have that drive. If someone has a choice of, I can become a professional athlete, or I can deal drugs and get shot, or I can starve on the streets, of course they're going to dedicate everything to it, and it's going to be their dream, it's going to be their passion, it's going to be the only thing they're focused on in their entire life. And that single-minded focus is what it takes to get great, right? Not only just putting in the hours, but putting in the hours well, and also having enough leverage to keep yourself putting in the hours. So you have to come up with some sort of reason or cause or purpose behind what you're doing. Okay, so for me, particularly in my particular case, I learned to play soccer, I learned to play chess, I learned to be pretty good at these things. I learned to get to a collegiate level, a semi-pro level at soccer. I learned to become a grade school and middle school state champion at chess. But there came a time with either of these endeavors where there was a point of no return. There was a point where I had to either dedicate my life to it, or I had to basically stagnate or quit. And in both cases, I basically chose to stagnate or quit. With chess, it was a situation where I'd been a state champion a couple times. I could go be theoretically probably a high school state champion if I kept doing what I was doing. But to really take it to a new level, I would have had to become try and be a national champion, in which case I would be competing with people who were hiring chess coaches, playing chess all the time, working 6 hours a day, 8 hours a day on their chess game, not even going to school because they were so busy doing it. So I would have had to really devote my life, and I wasn't willing to do that. And actually I think that was a good decision in that case, because I think if I'm going to dedicate myself to being good at something, there are more important things than chess. But the fact of the matter is, I never became great because I never fully dedicated myself. I never got that purpose behind it. Another great example for me was poker. Right? Poker is another thing that I became pretty good at but never fully excelled at. So the reason why I never excelled in that area as much as I could have is that I don't tend to be the most focused individual moment to moment. It's actually helped, meditation has helped that, and being back in the game has actually helped that. But even so, in poker, you have to watch hand after hand after hand that you're not involved in, and you have to be paying attention to everything, trying to gain every little bit of information. And out of the bits of information you get, maybe 1 in 50 of them will actually come in handy and make you some money. And that might not even make you that much money, but it does make the difference between a pretty good player and a truly great, truly outstanding player. So it's this constant process of trying to gain information, working so hard, focusing, but without any reward forthcoming, without any immediate feedback. And that's when it's the hardest, right? When you're getting positive feedback, it's really easy to stay motivated. Many people don't know this, but video games are actually designed to be motivationally optimal, right? You start at a very easy level that almost anyone can pass, you get some level of success, and then you get challenged along the way. And you get challenged, you get challenged, you get pushed. But a well-designed video game, it almost, the addictiveness of a video game, it almost doesn't matter how good the graphics are or how rich the game is. What almost matters more than that is the process that it puts you through. Does it put you through the right learning process where each level is optimally gradiented upward from the previous level? So that you are challenged by it, but it's a challenge you can overcome. So when you overcome it, when you succeed, it feels like you actually did something, but at the same time, you don't get to this plateau where you feel like you're not making progress, right? And so video games are designed that way, and that's why people will stay up for nights and weeks on end and skip work, call in sick, will devote their lives to these video games, is because they're designed to have that progression, okay? And so that's a good example of what motivation should be like, should feel like, right? You should be getting, ideally, some form of positive feedback, but it shouldn't be too easy. If it's too easy, then you won't really value it. You'll think it's cheap. It won't mean anything to you. If it's too hard, you won't be getting any positive feedback. You'll hit that plateau and you get frustrated, okay? So what does this tell us about motivation in game and in life? Well, what it tells us is that we should take the lesson that that they teach us in video games, the lesson that the video games show us, which is that we need to be constantly feeding ourselves back positive information, right? We need to be finding ways to see progress, finding ways to make it motivational, finding ways to find growth and find achievement in what we're doing on an ongoing basis, right? But it needs to be legitimate. You can't just like stand in front of the mirror and be like, I'm so great, I'm so great, I am the best. Because that's just bullshit. Your brain is smart. Your brain knows that that's not the real deal. It knows that like you're just making it up, right? You also can't say you're as an excellent middle school, high school chess player. I couldn't just like play like terrible players who don't even like barely know how to move the pieces and win over and over again. That's not satisfying to me because that's no challenge. So that's too far on the other end. On the other hand, if I just played grandmasters and lost over and over again and their strategies were so much more advanced from me, I couldn't even figure out where my mistakes were. That's also not so good. So you want to be constantly challenging yourself to be striving, to be doing something new, to be doing something that pushes yourself, but something you can handle, all right? And this is something actually, again, I'll give my dad credit for, that he did really, really well. I would constantly, take soccer for example, I would constantly be training with different soccer teams. So I'd be training with a team that would be like maybe a year or two older than me. And in that sort of circumstance, I'm just trying to hang in there. I'm just trying to like keep up physically. I'm trying to just play my best, trying to like play simple, not make mistakes, give the ball to the good players. And so that's one level where I'm kind of in over my head, but it pushes me. And then I'd have like playing with my own age group. And again, I was practicing more than everybody else. So when I was playing with my own age group, I tended to be a little bit ahead. I tended to be kind of a standout, but not like so far ahead that it was like a joke. Right? That was my reasonable level. That was the level I was actually competing at. But at the same time, I was advanced. And so I could try things out. I could be a little creative. I could be a little cheeky sometimes. And so that would work out. The third level I would play at, which is really interesting, was I would actually train with my little sister's teams, because he coached my little sister's team, so he'd have me come out and train and play with them. And when I play with them, he would intentionally impose restrictions on me. What he would do there is he'd say like, okay, I have to play left foot only, 2 touches, and I'm not allowed to score goals. I have to like try and set other people up, try and get assists, but I'm not allowed to like actually put the ball in the net myself. And then he'd put all the best players on one team and then put me on a team with a lot of the weaker players. So he'd stack the game, and he also would impose the restriction I can't like be physical, because obviously I don't want to hurt like the little girls. But he'd stack the odds so that everybody's getting a good experience, so that everybody's at that optimal challenge level, right? The players that are the best on that team are playing with a team that has me on it against them. So they're playing against a big, fast, strong defender, and they're playing against someone who's like smart and like organizing the people against them, that sort of thing. So it pushes them. The weaker players on the team are playing against the stronger players on the team, so they're pushed, but yet they have that support network of me. And then I am focusing on my weakest foot. I'm focusing on playing quickly, reading the game ahead of time rather than relying on my individual skills, that sort of thing. So the idea is that everyone is being pushed to like that optimal level. Everyone's in that sweet spot and everyone's improving. And that's the thing that my dad actually was an amazing, amazing coach, and that's why. It's because he would constantly find those sweet spots, okay? So how does this apply to learning game? Well, what it means is you want to be finding those sweet spots. You want to be finding ways that you can improve. A lot of guys, when they first get into this, they're actually making big improvements, but the problem is success is binary. Either you succeed or you don't. Either the girl likes you or she doesn't. Either she goes home with you or she doesn't. And so if you get 90% of the way to having her like you, but don't get it, that's exactly the same result in effect as if you got 50% of the way and didn't get it. And so it feels very binary. It feels very much the same, right? So in that case, what you want to do, you want to be going out and just gaming normally, but you also want to be maybe giving yourself easy challenges, right? Give yourself, like, say you're a total newbie, give yourself the challenge, if you have approach anxiety, of just saying hi to a bunch of girls. Something that's just a little nervous for you, but then you have permission to leave. And then you say hi and you build the conversation. So now, instead of having a scenario where you're constantly going in and getting rejected, or going in and not getting the girl, and your only feedback is, I didn't get the girl and I don't understand, you give yourself these little building blocks along the way so that you can actually see the progress as you go, right? And then on top of that, you do want to do the normal sets, and you do want to put yourself through that failure because it's the most real feedback you're going to get. But along the way, you want to be giving yourself some positivity and some good feedback, right? Then let's flip it around and let's talk about an advanced guy. For a guy who's more advanced, Now you're at a situation where you are getting girls pretty consistently. You can get a 7 or an 8. You can take a girl home with you most nights. Most of the sets that you do will go pretty well. It just comes down to logistics. Now at this point, you want to be upping it so that you're doing, 9s and 10s. You're dealing with sets with guys and you're dealing with difficult logistics, right? But the problem is it's harder to find those, right? If you start scanning around for 9s and 10s, you're ruining your momentum, you're ruining your fun of the night, and now you're getting all in your head, and so you're creating this like weird obstacle. And so there are a couple different things you can do. Number one, you can try and push through that and actually game in your head and force yourself out of your head, force yourself to do it the hard way and make that your challenge. The other thing you could do is handicap yourself certain ways, right? For example, we do exercises where we'll go and game without talking. Or for example, you game and try and not be funny. You try and be super serious and just be non-reactive and game. Or for example, I gave an assignment to some guys recently to open with something like a really bad opener and then try and turn the set around. So what you're doing here is if things are becoming too easy, if it's too soft of a situation, you then find a way to make it a challenge for yourself so you see that growth. So you want to be constantly putting yourself in a situation again where you can see that growth. So that's sort of structuring your opportunity in terms of learning and motivation. The other thing is, how do you get motivation in yourself? How do you find a purpose in something, all right? You want to always take a long timeline and you want to have clearly defined goals. I kind of mentioned this in the last video I put out, but it's very important with respect to learning any particular skill or getting good at something that you actually know what it is you aspire to and you know the why. Don't just focus on the how. So say you want to get good in the gym. You don't just, get the proper technique, proper diet, and then like try and put a gun to your head and make yourself go every day. Instead, motivate yourself, right? Take before and after pictures and like compare every few weeks so you can see that progress. Or put like a vision board on your wall for what you're looking at. Or if you're actually moving up through weights rather than measuring like the physical body, which might not be changing, like keep a log of your weights, keep a graph, keep something that's going to keep reinforcing, keep finding the positive so that you can stay motivated. Okay. Again, we're back to that emphasis. But also find something outside yourself. Why do you want to get in good shape? Is it because you want to live a long, healthy life? Think about that. Think about like all the things you'd like to do when you're 80, like maybe like plan vacations, plan out like the things you'd like to do when you're older. Or is it like because you'd like to get girls? All right, well then maybe take a few minutes each day and imagine, just close your eyes and imagine how good it's going to feel when girls are like looking at you and your sexy body and just like falling in love with it. Take a minute and imagine that. So again, find a way to get leverage on yourself. Find a way to make it not just about the thing itself, but about the outcomes, about the emotional feelings you're going to have on those outcomes later, all right? So just to summarize, it's kind of getting dark here. As you guys can tell, the light's changing as we speak. But just to summarize, in terms of how to get motivated, all right? Number one, think about what you're trying to motivate. If it's a motivation thing where you just have to do it, if it's just like, just do it, just get good enough, then the easiest shortcut, the quickest way to do it is probably external motivation. Just rely on that. You don't need to get like passionate and like have a cause to, remember to brush your teeth every day or remember to do some like mundane habit that's not actually difficult. So for that, you really, really don't need to like waste the time and make it your life's calling, all right? For the little things, just, reward yourself, punish yourself, get it done. For the big things, you're gonna have to find a real reason. You're gonna have to find something that truly motivates you and truly inspires you, because end of the day, extrinsic motivation only goes so far. And actually, they've done studies where if you have external rewards for something, it actually hurts your motivation, because over time you start to rationalize to yourself that the reason you were motivated was because of those external rewards. So in a sense, those can actually hurt you. So be very wary of that as well. And then the other thing to keep in mind, just to summarize, is make sure that you create a progression for yourself. Make sure you create a situation where you can succeed, but where you're actually pushed. So you want to be hitting that sweet spot of flow to keep yourself motivated, keep yourself engaged in the process, right? Make it a situation where you are actively challenged, but it's a challenge you feel you're capable of overcoming. If it gets too hard, go easy on yourself, lighten up, and then hit that challenge later. If it's too easy, make it a challenge. Either handicap yourself or set a higher, more lofty goal, all right? So that's how to stay motivated, the Todd version from Miami, South Beach, Florida, and I will see you next time. Take it easy, best of luck.